Dinosaurs have always lived halfway between science and imagination. For more than 200 years, their bones have risen from the quiet earth like forgotten echoes, inviting us to guess who these ancient beings really were. Long before we had the tools to study fossils carefully, early naturalists tried to understand enormous bones with limited knowledge, and their best guesses slowly transformed into myths that stayed with us for generations. For most people, dinosaurs entered their childhood through picture books, cartoons, and movies. These early impressions carried dramatic colors, thunderous roars, enormous teeth, and fierce battles. And although these images made dinosaurs exciting, many of them were shaped more by storytelling than by real evidence. With every new scientific discovery, we learned that the ancient world was calmer, more diverse, and far more detailed than the popular image that became so familiar. In this bedtime journey, we gently explore 100 of the most persistent myths about dinosaurs. Some of these myths began in Victorian times, when scientists first tried to assemble strange skeletons and gave them shapes that now seem impossible. Other myths grew from gaps in the fossil record, small clues that scientists misinterpreted before we understood how living creatures change over millions of years. And many myths came simply from imagination, from the desire to turn ancient creatures into dramatic characters, louder and wilder than they ever were. Tonight, we slow everything down. We look at dinosaurs not as fierce giants or monsters, but as real animals that lived quietly in forests, plains, deserts, and coastlines long before humans existed. We explore how they moved, how they ate, what they looked like, and how they fit into ancient ecosystems that stretched across warm continents lost to time. We learn why some had feathers, why others made soft, low sounds instead of roars, and why size alone could never define their lives. As we move through this gentle debunking of myths, we will discover that the truth is just as wondrous as any story, only calmer, more grounded, and shaped by evidence hidden in stone. Each chapter returns us to a different part of the prehistoric world, reminding us that dinosaurs were not legends or symbols, but living beings that thrived in a world filled with details we are only beginning to understand. So settle in, breathe slowly, and let the ancient Earth drift into focus. A quiet world of real dinosaurs awaits, far more peaceful and far more fascinating than the myths we once believed. Long before dinosaurs became familiar creatures in books and movies, their story began quietly, hidden deep within layers of ancient stone. The first people to discover enormous bones did not know about deep time or extinct reptiles. They simply found shapes far larger than anything alive around them. In China, large fossils were sometimes described as the remains of ancient dragons, because smooth, curved bones resembled the coiled shapes in old legends. In Europe, early farmers uncovered bones in riverbeds and thought they had found giants mentioned in folklore, long before anyone imagined ancient ecosystems. When naturalists of the 1600s and 1700s tried to understand these bones, they had almost no reference point, so many early reconstructions were nearly unrecognizable. Some drawings showed dinosaurs standing like huge lizards with dragging bellies, simply because that was the only shape scientists knew at the time. One of the earliest misconceptions was that all dinosaurs lived in swamps. This idea formed because large bones were often found in wet sediments, So researchers assumed the animals must have lived only in marshy environments. We now know this was a coincidence of preservation, not a reflection of their true habitats. Another early myth claimed that dinosaurs were slow, dim-witted creatures. This misconception came from the large size of fossil skull cavities, where early scientists incorrectly believed a small brain meant a nearly helpless animal. Today, we understand that brain size does not directly reflect intelligence, and many dinosaurs had senses and behaviors suited perfectly to their environments. By the Victorian era, dinosaur discoveries became a source of public wonder. Huge models were built for exhibitions, and although they amazed visitors, they often reflected the scientific limitations of the time. Some dinosaurs were shown standing upright like giant humans, and others had strange skin because fossils rarely preserved detailed textures. These early reconstructions quietly shaped public imagination for generations. Children grew up seeing dinosaurs as enormous, sluggish reptiles, even though this idea came from incomplete evidence rather than true biology. As paleontology advanced, new tools allowed researchers to examine bones more precisely. Microscopes revealed delicate patterns, footprints preserved movement, and computer modeling showed how bones fit together in life. Slowly, many early myths began to fade. We learned that dinosaurs were not simple lumbering creatures, but a diverse group that adapted to countless climates and landscapes. The quiet work of modern science replaced the early guesses with a clearer picture, allowing us to gently reshape our understanding. This chapter begins with these early misunderstandings because they help explain how myths take root and why they remained part of our stories for so long. By exploring them one by one, we can watch the ancient Earth become clearer and calmer as the real dinosaurs quietly step into focus. As more fossils surfaced during the 19th century, early paleontologists faced a challenge that seems almost unimaginable today. They had to piece together entire animals from fragments scattered across riverbeds, cliffs, and quarries, often without knowing which bones belonged to which species. Because of this, one of the most persistent early myths began quietly: the belief that dinosaurs were simply oversized lizards. The name dinosaur itself, meaning terrible lizard, contributed to the confusion. Scientists at the time naturally compared the fossils to the animals they already knew. This led to drawings and sculptures showing dinosaurs with sprawling legs, flat bellies, and long, dragging tails. The animals were imagined almost like gigantic modern reptiles, heavy and sluggish, with little agility or grace. But as more complete skeletons appeared, a very different picture emerged. Bones showed that dinosaur limbs were positioned directly beneath the body, like the legs of birds and mammals, not sprawled to the sides like a lizard. This meant their posture was upright, their stride was efficient, and many could move more smoothly than early depictions suggested. Another myth formed from the uncertainty of those early discoveries, the idea that dinosaurs were all similar in shape and behavior. With only a few fossils to study, it was easy to imagine a world where every dinosaur walked the same way and lived in similar habitats. But each year brought new fossils that revealed more diversity. Some dinosaurs had armor plates, horns, or delicate crests. Others had feathers, hollow bones, or tiny hands suited for fine movements. The early belief in uniformity faded as scientists recognized how varied these creatures truly were. Even their environments were misunderstood in those early days. Because many bones were found in areas that were once river deltas or floodplains, scientists assumed dinosaurs spent most of their lives in water. This led to calm artwork showing giant herbivores half-submerged, relying on water to support their weight. Today, we know these animals were strong enough to walk confidently on land. The myth of the swamp-bound dinosaur vanished once bone strength, footprint patterns, and muscle reconstructions were studied more closely. Yet, despite these corrections, the early misconceptions lingered for decades. They appeared in books, in museum displays, and in childhood illustrations. Myths often last longest, not because they are convincing, but because they are familiar. By revisiting these early mistakes, we appreciate how careful modern paleontology has become. Each fossil is now studied with patience, precision, and the understanding that one misplaced bone can create an entire myth. And in this slow, thoughtful work, the true shapes of dinosaurs continue to emerge. As paleontology entered the early 20th century, new discoveries spread quickly through newspapers and traveling exhibitions, but scientific caution did not always keep pace with public excitement. This created another wave of myths, shaped less by fossils and more by storytelling meant to entertain curious audiences. One popular myth claimed that dinosaurs were constantly roaring and battling, as if the ancient world were filled with endless noise and conflict. This idea did not come from evidence, but from artists who wanted to make displays more dramatic for visitors. Fossils do not preserve sound, and most dinosaurs likely made gentle or resonant calls, similar to modern large animals that communicate with low rumbles. Another misunderstanding grew from the earliest museum mounts. Because bones were often incomplete, preparators filled the missing pieces with plaster, sometimes guided by guesswork rather than data. This led to poses that appeared natural at the time, but are now known to be impossible for the animal's joints and muscles. For example, some dinosaurs were mounted with tails that drooped heavily onto the floor. This posture persisted for decades, even though trackways later revealed that dinosaurs held their tails straight and balanced, keeping them from dragging and ensuring smooth, stable movement. There was also the myth that all dinosaurs were cold-blooded, slow, and dependent on warm climates. This idea came from the early belief that dinosaurs were giant reptiles behaving like oversized lizards. But as science advanced, evidence from bone growth patterns, predator-prey relationships, and the presence of feathers suggested that many dinosaurs were at least partially warm-blooded. Another influential myth began with early fossil hunters who imagined the ancient world as a uniform, steamy jungle. Because tropical plants were often found near dinosaur fossils, people assumed all dinosaurs lived in hot, humid environments. We now know they lived in deserts, coastal plains, forests, swamps, and even polar regions with long, cold winters. Yet, one of the most surprising early misconceptions involved the speed of evolution itself. Scientists once believed dinosaurs changed very slowly, with little variation over millions of years. This myth arose from limited fossil records that gave the impression of long periods of stability. As more fossils were discovered across different continents, the picture shifted. We learned that evolutionary change could be dynamic, producing diverse shapes and sizes as continents drifted and climates shifted. The dinosaur family tree became more complex, revealing branches that split, adapted, and vanished in ways early researchers never imagined. These early misconceptions remind us that science grows through careful correction. Each fossil adds a new detail, gently replacing old guesses with clearer understanding. The origin of dinosaur myths is not a story of failure, but of exploration, of people trying to understand a world far older than their own. As the 20th century progressed, dinosaur science began to shift from curiosity to discipline, and with this shift came the careful unraveling of some of the most deeply rooted myths. But for many decades, museums and textbooks continued to rely on older interpretations, allowing misconceptions to travel quietly through generations. One such myth grew from the earliest attempts to classify fossils. Because paleontologists sometimes found bones of different species mixed together by ancient rivers or landslides, early reconstructions occasionally combined them into a single creature. This led to animals that appeared real in drawings but never existed in life. Perhaps the most famous example was the confusion surrounding Iguanodon. Early scientists placed a thumb spike on its nose, imagining it as a horn. This mistake lasted for years until more complete fossils revealed the correct position of the spike, quietly correcting a myth that had become iconic. Museum displays also contributed to misunderstandings about how dinosaurs stood and moved. Some skeletons were arranged upright in dramatic vertical poses that no living animal could sustain. These towering stances were chosen to impress visitors rather than to reflect true biomechanics. Over time, new discoveries revealed subtler details that reshaped these assumptions. Footprint trails showed how dinosaurs walked with rhythmic, balanced steps. Joint structures demonstrated the natural limits of movement, allowing paleontologists to rebuild poses that matched the animals' real bodies. Even the idea that dinosaurs were uniformly scaly, bare-skinned giants persisted because fossilized skin impressions were rare. Most people imagined them through the lens of lizards and crocodiles, the closest modern animals available. Only recent discoveries, including delicate feather traces, began to correct the picture, showing that some dinosaurs carried soft plumage or mixed textures. Another early myth suggested that dinosaurs all lived at the same time, sharing one dramatic moment in history. This image formed because fossils were discovered out of order and spread across vast distances. In reality, dinosaurs lived over more than 160 million years, far longer than the time separating us from the earliest humans. This slow accumulation of corrections reminds us how easily myths form when knowledge is incomplete. Each assumption, once accepted, took years of patient work to replace with clearer evidence. And each myth, once corrected, brought the ancient world into sharper focus. As we close this first chapter, we move from the origins of these early misconceptions toward one of the most enduring ideas of all. The belief that every dinosaur was enormous shaped stories for more than a century, even though many were surprisingly small. In the next chapter, we gently explore myths of size, scale, and the true diversity of dinosaur bodies. For many people, the very word dinosaur brings to mind towering giants, creatures so large that the ground might tremble beneath their feet. This image is powerful, but it is also one of the most widespread myths about the ancient world. The truth is far more varied. While some dinosaurs did reach astonishing sizes, Most were no larger than modern mammals and birds. Many species were actually small enough to perch on a branch, move quietly through underbrush, or hide from predators in tall ferns. Part of this myth began with early discoveries that focused heavily on the biggest fossils. Gigantic bones were easier to spot, easier to preserve, and easier to excite the public with. For exhibition halls and news stories, the dramatic scale of these finds became irresistible. Smaller fossils, however, were often missed or dismissed. Tiny bones were fragile, harder to identify, and sometimes too delicate for early excavation tools. This created an unintentional bias that made the dinosaur world seem larger than it truly was. But when paleontologists later turned their attention to microfossils and fine sediments, a different story emerged. They found dinosaurs the size of chickens, sparrows, and even small cats. These creatures thrived in their own ecological niches, playing essential roles in ancient ecosystems. One famous example is Microraptor, a feathered dinosaur that weighed less than a small house cat. Its delicate wings allowed it to glide through trees with quiet, nimble movements, completely unlike the heavy, earth-shaking giants often imagined. Another example is Compsognathus, a lightweight dinosaur about the size of a modern crow. Its slender bones and bird-like posture reveal a creature built for speed and delicate precision, not for immense size. Even the enormous sauropods, the long-necked giants often pictured as the true symbols of dinosaur size, represent only one branch of the dinosaur family tree. For every colossal species, there were dozens of smaller ones that lived unseen in the shadows of ancient forests. The myth of universal gigantism also grew from limited public exposure to fossil diversity. Museum halls often featured only the largest skeletons because they filled space impressively and drew crowds. The quiet presence of small dinosaurs remained mostly in research papers and field notes. Modern paleontology, however, highlights this diversity more clearly. We now understand that dinosaurs ranged from tiny insect hunters to massive plant eaters, forming a world as varied in size as modern animals. Recognizing this helps us appreciate the ancient Earth as a balanced, dynamic ecosystem, not a landscape ruled only by giants. In the next segment, we explore how exaggerated estimates of size shaped some of the most persistent myths about dinosaur proportions. As discoveries continued through the 20th century, another myth quietly took shape: the belief that many dinosaurs were far larger than they truly were. Early size estimates often relied on partial skeletons, leading to reconstructions that stretched animals far beyond their natural proportions. One classic example involves sauropods, the long-necked giants that captured public imagination. Because complete skeletons were rare, paleontologists sometimes used bones from different individuals to assemble a single mount. If the bones came from unusually large specimens, the resulting animal appeared immense, even greater than any individual that ever lived. These early reconstructions often impressed museum visitors, but they also created exaggerated expectations about dinosaur size. People began to assume that every sauropod weighed as much as multiple elephants, even though more precise measurements later revealed smaller, more realistic numbers. Mass estimates were especially difficult. Without modern scanning technology, scientists relied on clay models or mathematical approximations that tended to overestimate weight. This led to dramatic claims of dinosaurs so heavy they could barely support their own bodies. But when new techniques became available, including digital modeling and 3D reconstructions, a different picture emerged. Bone density studies showed that sauropods had lightweight, air-filled vertebrae similar to birds, reducing their overall mass. Thin walls inside their bones acted like natural engineering solutions, balancing strength with efficiency. The myth of overwhelming heaviness began to fade. These giants were still enormous, but they were not the sluggish, overweight creatures early estimates suggested. Another misconception came from early depictions of predatory dinosaurs. Artists portrayed them as towering, oversized hunters, often leaning upright like giant kangaroos. This posture stretched their height far beyond natural limits and made them appear far larger than their bones supported. Trackway evidence and joint analysis later revealed that these animals walked with horizontal spines, keeping their heads low and balanced. This corrected posture reduced their apparent height significantly, but it also revealed a more realistic, agile silhouette. Fossils of smaller predators added additional nuance. Many species were sleek and lightweight, designed for speed rather than bulk. These discoveries reminded scientists that large predators were only one part of a broader ecological spectrum. Even popular species, like Velociraptor, were once imagined at movie-scale sizes that never matched their fossil counterparts. In reality, Velociraptor was closer to the size of a large turkey, quick and intelligent, but not the towering figure many imagined. This segment gently reminds us how easy it was for early researchers to overestimate size when working with incomplete information. Through modern methods, the world of dinosaurs becomes clearer, showing creatures that ranged from tiny and delicate to enormous and awe-inspiring, each perfectly adapted to its place in ancient ecosystems. Among the most persistent myths about dinosaur size is the belief that large bodies meant slow, clumsy movement. This assumption appeared early in paleontology, long before scientists understood how bones, muscles, and balance worked together. Because many of the biggest dinosaurs had thick, weight-bearing limbs, early researchers imagined them as animals that could barely lift their feet. They were pictured as creatures that trudged heavily across the landscape, moving with great effort and little precision. But as more evidence emerged, this narrative gradually changed. Studies of bone structure revealed strong, hollow cores that provided both support and flexibility. These internal adaptations allowed even the largest dinosaurs to move steadily and efficiently, not clumsily as once believed. Trackways preserved in ancient mud offered further insight. Footprints showed long, confident strides, suggesting that large herbivores traveled in stable herds across wide plains. The spacing of the prints revealed animals that moved with deliberate rhythm, their steps light enough not to sink deeply into the soft ground. Another myth suggested that the longest dinosaurs must have been the heaviest. This came from early attempts to imagine mass based only on length, without understanding how air-filled bones and large lungs reduced weight. Modern reconstructions now show that some of the longest species were surprisingly light for their size, relying on graceful balance rather than sheer mass. Smaller dinosaurs also contributed to misunderstandings. Because early discoveries emphasized dramatic fossils, the tiny species remained out of public focus. This led to the belief that small dinosaurs were rare, even though they were abundant. New discoveries helped correct this impression. Many small dinosaurs were agile insect hunters, darting quickly through ancient undergrowth. Their lightweight bodies allowed them to escape predators, climb branches, or chase small prey with remarkable speed. Some species, like Parvicursor, were so small that their delicate skeletons were easily overlooked in earlier excavations. Modern tools revealed their tiny skeletons, adding a new depth to our understanding of prehistoric ecosystems. This chapter also helps us appreciate that size did not define an animal's importance. Small dinosaurs contributed daily to the stability of their environments, just as tiny mammals, birds, and insects do today. From the smallest feathered runners to the largest plant eaters, each species fit into a balanced world shaped by climate, food, and ancient evolution. As we leave behind the myths of every dinosaur as a giant, we begin to see the prehistoric world more clearly. In the next chapter, we explore myths not about size, but about behavior, ideas shaped heavily by movies, artwork, and imagination. By looking at how dinosaurs truly acted, we discover a quieter, more nuanced ancient world, filled with behaviors that rarely match the dramatic scenes we often picture. When people imagine dinosaurs, they often picture a world filled with constant battles, dramatic chases, and ear-shaking roars echoing across ancient landscapes. This image, shaped by decades of movies and illustrations, has become one of the most persistent myths about dinosaur behavior. In reality, most dinosaurs likely lived much quieter, more ordinary lives. Like modern animals, they spent far more time feeding, resting, and avoiding conflict than engaging in dramatic displays of aggression. The ancient world was not a non-stop arena of constant combat, but a balanced environment where animals conserved energy whenever possible. One of the strongest myths suggests that dinosaurs roared like giant lions. This belief came entirely from imagination, because fossils do not preserve sound. Modern research suggests that many dinosaurs may have produced deep, closed-mouth vocalizations similar to the low, resonant calls of large birds or crocodilians. These sounds travel softly over long distances, allowing communication without alerting predators or prey. It is far more likely the ancient world was filled with deep rumbles, gentle hoots, and pulsing vibrations, rather than dramatic, cinematic roars. Another myth tells us that predatory dinosaurs were constantly hunting. But in nature, hunting requires energy, strategy, and risk, which makes non-stop pursuit unrealistic for any animal. Large predators today spend long periods resting or observing, and dinosaurs likely behaved in similar ways.
Evidence from healed bite marks and fossil injuries also reveal that many dinosaurs survived encounters without frequent fatal conflicts. This suggests that while conflicts did occur, they were rare and costly, not everyday events. A different myth claims that all dinosaurs were aggressive by nature. This idea likely grew from their size, teeth, and dramatic reconstructions. But many species were gentle herbivores, grazing quietly and relying on group behavior rather than aggression. Fossilized nesting sites provide calm glimpses into dinosaur lives. Carefully arranged eggs, repeated nesting grounds, and fossilized footprints of young animals all suggest that many species engaged in patient, coordinated care for their offspring. These behaviors reflect stability, not aggression. Even predators displayed more nuance than popular stories suggest. Tooth-wear patterns show that some carnivores scavenged frequently, choosing the safest source of food rather than engaging in dangerous hunts. Others may have hunted in coordinated groups, similar to the quiet, strategic behavior seen in modern birds of prey. By examining these insights, we begin to see dinosaur behavior as varied, subtle, and shaped by environmental needs rather than constant conflict. The ancient world becomes calmer as myths of endless roaring and dramatic battles gently fade. In the next segment, we explore how posture, social habits, and everyday activity further challenge the way dinosaurs are often portrayed.
Another enduring myth about dinosaur behavior is the belief that nearly all species were solitary, wandering ancient landscapes alone in search of food. This idea grew from early fossil finds where single skeletons appeared isolated, giving the impression of lonely creatures. But as excavations expanded, paleontologists began discovering large bone beds containing multiple individuals of the same species. These discoveries suggested that many dinosaurs lived in groups, forming herds, flocks, or social circles suited to their environments. One of the clearest examples comes from hadrosaurs, the gentle plant eaters often pictured grazing in quiet valleys. Fossil evidence shows that they traveled in organized herds, with young animals nestled safely within the group. This kind of coordinated movement reflects calm, cooperative behavior rather than scattered, solitary wandering. Even large predators may not have been as solitary as once imagined. Trackways containing parallel footprints hint that some carnivorous dinosaurs walked together, possibly following prey or patrolling shared territories. These footprints show consistent spacing and direction, suggesting purposeful group movement. Another myth claims that dinosaurs spent their days in near constant motion. This belief likely comes from modern depictions where dinosaurs appear always chasing, fleeing, or pacing across open plains. In reality, large animals conserve energy by resting for long periods, a pattern almost certainly shared by dinosaurs. Footprint sites often reveal long pauses where animals stood quietly, shifting their weight but not moving far. These subtle marks show a calmer daily rhythm, one filled with stillness, observation, and gradual activity instead of constant motion. There is also the myth that dinosaur behavior was simple or predictable. Early scientists assumed reptiles must be instinctual and straightforward, and this expectation was applied to dinosaurs as well. But as more fossils appeared, a more complex picture emerged. Nesting sites reveal repeated use of the same areas, showing memory and seasonal patterns. Some dinosaurs arranged eggs carefully, suggesting gentle, coordinated movements. Others built raised nests or dug shallow pits, using strategies that varied between species. These discoveries reveal animals with behaviors suited to their environments, not mindless repetition. They responded to climate shifts, food availability, and social structure, just as modern birds and mammals do today. Even their social interactions were more nuanced than once believed. Bone injuries in dominant individuals suggest that conflicts likely followed structured patterns, similar to displays seen in modern herds of large animals. These behaviors minimize harm while establishing roles within the group. Together, these insights show that dinosaurs lived with rhythms far calmer and more balanced than popular stories describe. They were not endlessly fierce, nor endlessly active, but adapted creatures with quiet habits shaped by their ecosystems. In the next segment, we continue exploring behavior myths by examining how dinosaurs interacted with their surroundings, from care of offspring to communication and movement through ancient landscapes. One of the most dramatic myths about dinosaur behavior suggests that predators spent much of their time locked in fierce battles with each other or with large prey. This idea became popular through artwork that emphasized teeth, claws, and dramatic poses, often filling scenes with tension and conflict. But fossil evidence tells a quieter, more measured story. Most predators, including large ones, likely hunted only when necessary and chose prey that offered the least resistance. This strategy conserved energy and reduced the risk of injury, reflecting patterns we see in modern animals. Another myth says that dinosaurs fought constantly for territory. In reality, territorial behavior leaves clear signs, such as repeated injuries and defensive structures. While some species did display signs of competition, most evidence points to occasional disputes rather than constant territorial battles.
Fossilized injuries offer important clues. Some bones show healed bite marks or fractures, meaning the animal survived the encounter and had enough time to recover. This suggests that conflicts, when they happened, were brief and not always life-threatening. Body language also played a significant role in dinosaur interactions. Crests, horns, frills, and feathers may have acted as visual signals used to communicate strength or readiness without resorting to violence. Such displays help prevent unnecessary fights, a common behavior in many modern species. There is also a misconception that large carnivores hunted alone, relying solely on their strength. But some trackways hint at coordinated movement, with multiple individuals traveling in the same direction at similar speeds. This does not confirm pack hunting, but it suggests at least some level of social coordination. Another myth imagines plant-eating dinosaurs as helpless victims, constantly fleeing predators. Yet many herbivores possessed effective defenses, such as horns, clubs, armor plates, or speed. These adaptations reduced the need for constant fear and allowed them to graze calmly in groups. Even feeding behaviors were more varied than the myths suggest. Some predators used patience, waiting quietly for the right moment rather than chasing prey over long distances. Others may have scavenged frequently, choosing safety and efficiency over dramatic hunts. The idea that dinosaurs were always fierce oversimplifies a much more balanced reality. Most species, like animals today, lived steady lives shaped by food, climate, and social needs rather than constant aggression. As we explore these calmer interpretations, the ancient world becomes less chaotic and more natural, filled with rhythms of eating, resting, and moving through familiar landscapes. In the next segment, we look at communication, parental care, and the subtle social interactions that reveal an even gentler side of dinosaur behavior.
One of the gentlest corrections to popular dinosaur myths concerns the idea that these ancient animals lacked complex communication. Early portrayals often showed species moving silently, making only dramatic roars or fierce hisses during moments of conflict. But a growing body of evidence suggests that dinosaurs likely communicated in subtle, varied ways. Fossilized skull structures reveal chambers and passageways that could support resonant, low-frequency sounds. These gentle vibrations travel far across open landscapes, allowing animals to stay connected without drawing attention from predators. Another myth imagines dinosaurs as inattentive parents that left their young to survive alone. This idea came from early assumptions that reptiles provide little care after laying eggs. But many dinosaurs behaved differently, as shown by carefully arranged nesting sites and repeated use of the same breeding grounds. Some fossils preserve entire clusters of nests, suggesting coordinated behavior among adults. The spacing of the nests reveal that parents left enough room to move, guard, and tend to their eggs. These details point toward patience and protective care
rather than indifference. Footprints around nesting areas add further clarity. Small tracks mixed with larger ones show young dinosaurs walking close to adults, learning to navigate their environment step by step. This close association hints at nurturing behaviors that challenge the myth of cold, distant prehistoric life. There is also the popular belief that dinosaurs were constantly tense or alert, but fossil evidence of resting poses suggests long periods of stillness, where animals folded their limbs and tucked their tails, similar to the calm resting behavior seen in modern birds. These quiet moments remind us that the ancient world was not defined only by movement, but also by long pauses shaped by daylight, weather, and the rhythms of survival. Another myth claims that dinosaurs lacked social bonds. Yet injuries on bones show patterns that might indicate individuals lived long enough for wounds to heal, possibly receiving protection from their group during recovery. This resilience hints at cooperative behavior, especially among herbivores that benefited from safety in numbers. Even predator-prey relationships were less dramatic than often imagined. Herbivores were not endlessly fleeing. Predators were not endlessly pursuing. Instead, ancient ecosystems followed natural patterns of balance, with each species fitting into calm cycles of feeding, resting, and migration. As this chapter closes, the image of dinosaurs as fierce, roaring monsters begins to soften. They were complex animals, capable of communication, care, and quiet routines that rarely appear in dramatic stories. With behavior myths gently set aside, we move next into myths about appearance. In the following chapter, we explore feathers, colors, skin textures, and the surprising ways dinosaurs truly looked, challenging some of the most familiar images in public imagination. For many years, dinosaurs were imagined with smooth, scaly skin in muted shades of gray or green, shaped heavily by early artwork and comparisons to modern reptiles. This image became so familiar that it formed one of the most persistent myths about how dinosaurs truly looked. The belief that all dinosaurs were scaly began simply because the first fossils discovered preserved only bones. Soft tissues like skin, feathers, and colors rarely survive fossilization, leaving early scientists to make assumptions based on the animals they knew best. Lizards and crocodiles seemed like reasonable comparisons, even though they are only distant relatives. As paleontologists uncovered more fossils, they began finding small patches of preserved skin impressions. These impressions revealed textures that varied dramatically between species. Some dinosaurs did have scales, arranged in patterns that offered protection or flexibility. But others surprised scientists. Delicate impressions showed fine filaments, soft, downy coverings, and structures resembling early feathers. This evidence suggested that feathers were far more widespread among dinosaurs than once believed. Another myth claimed that feathers belonged only to the direct ancestors of birds. But fossils from species like Eutyrannus a large predator, revealed long, thick feathers that stretched across its body. This discovery changed the scientific view, showing that feathers served multiple purposes, such as insulation and display. Even small herbivores showed hints of filament-like covering. These soft textures may have helped regulate temperature or signal maturity, blending function with appearance. The myth of uniformly dull coloration also grew from early scientific limitations. Because skin and feathers rarely retain pigments, artists often chose safe, neutral colors. This created the image of dinosaurs as creatures forever locked in muted, shadowy tones. But newer discoveries offer glimpses of ancient color. Microscopic structures called melanosomes, preserved in some fossil feathers, reveal patterns consistent with rich dark tones, iridescent sheens, and subtle gradients. These findings suggest that at least some dinosaurs displayed vibrant or patterned colors similar to modern birds. It is important to note that not all dinosaurs were feathered, and not all were colorful. The ancient world contained a spectrum of textures and appearances, ranging from smooth scales to layered feathers. This diversity reflects the varied environments they lived in, from warm forests to cooler regions where insulation mattered. As we explore these details, the old image of dinosaurs as uniformly scaly and colorless slowly fades. In its place, a more varied and nuanced picture emerges, shaped by evidence rather than assumptions. In the next segment, we look deeper into the myths surrounding feathers, examining how their presence reshaped our understanding of dinosaur evolution and appearance.
One of the most surprising shifts in dinosaur science came from the discovery of widespread feather-like structures, reshaping a myth that only small, bird-like dinosaurs ever carried feathers. Early reconstructions treated feathers as a rare and specialized feature, reserved for species closely related to modern birds. This belief began to change when paleontologists uncovered exquisitely preserved fossils from sites with fine, delicate sediments. These fossils revealed feather impressions in animals far larger and more diverse than anyone expected. Some species carried simple filaments, while others possessed complex structures resembling early flight feathers. The idea that feathers evolved late in dinosaur history also proved incorrect. Evidence now suggests that simple feather-like filaments appeared early and independently in several groups, hinting at multiple evolutionary origins. This subtlety challenges the myth that feathers were always linked directly to flight. Most dinosaurs could not fly at all. Instead, feathers provided insulation, helped regulate body temperature, or acted as visual signals in displays. Some dinosaurs may have used feathers for balance or communication, similar to how modern birds spread their wings or raise crests. The presence of feathers does not mean dinosaurs were covered completely or resembled modern birds closely. Many species combined feathers and scales in unique patterns across their bodies. Large predators, for example, may have had feathers only on certain areas, such as the neck, arms, or back.
This balanced distribution reflects environmental needs. Feathers retain body heat well, so smaller dinosaurs in cooler regions benefited from denser coverings. Larger species generated more internal heat and may have needed fewer feathers to stay warm. Another myth suggests that feathered dinosaurs must have looked delicate or fragile, but fossils of species like Uteranus demonstrate that even powerful predators could carry thick, insulating feathers while maintaining strength and agility. Their appearance was likely a blend of robust muscles and soft, layered textures, rather than the sleek, scaly forms often imagined. These discoveries highlight how feathers shaped the ancient world beyond flight. They helped regulate warmth, signaled maturity, and contributed to social behaviors long before true birds emerged. Feathers also help correct assumptions about color. Microscopic melanosomes found in some fossil feathers match patterns seen in modern birds, suggesting dark glimmers, mottled textures, and even iridescent sheens. This reveals an ancient world richer in subtlety than early interpretations allowed. As we move deeper into appearance myths, we see how feathers offer more than decoration. They provide clues about climate, behavior, lineage, and the deep evolutionary connections between dinosaurs and modern birds. In the next segment, we explore additional myths about dinosaur skin, posture, and overall shape, revealing how misunderstandings persisted even when bones told clearer stories.
Another common myth about dinosaur appearance is the belief that all species shared the same basic body shape, with thick limbs, heavy tails, and similar silhouettes. This impression formed early, when only a handful of fossils were known, and artists built entire worlds from limited examples. As discoveries grew, paleontologists began to see striking variations. Some dinosaurs had deep chests and slim legs for fast running, while others carried wide hips and strong forelimbs suited for digging or climbing. These differences challenged the myth of uniformity that had shaped public imagination for decades. Another misconception involves dinosaur posture. Early artwork often showed animals standing upright, resting on their tails like giant scaly kangaroos. This pose came from misunderstandings about the spine and pelvis, long before scientists studied how vertebrae aligned in life. Trackways provided the first clues that these upright reconstructions were incorrect. Footprints revealed a forward-leaning posture, with long, balanced tails held off the ground. This arrangement helped dinosaurs move efficiently, using the tail like a counterweight rather than a support. There is also the myth that dinosaur skin was always rough, thick, and heavily armored. While some species did have armor plates or bony nodules, many others had smooth or finely textured scales that provided flexibility. In some fossils, skin impressions show patterns of tiny overlapping scales that resemble the delicate textures seen in modern reptiles and birds. Color myths remain equally persistent.
For many years, dinosaurs were imagined only in dull shades, simply because the evidence for color was limited. Artists used greens and browns as safe choices, unintentionally reinforcing the myth that variation was unlikely. Modern discoveries reveal a more nuanced picture. Melanosome analysis hints at dark feathers, subtle striping, and possibly even iridescence in some small species. This does not mean dinosaurs were brightly colored everywhere, but it shows that ancient ecosystems contained richer variety than earlier imagined. Another appearance myth suggests that all dinosaurs were reptilian in every detail. This idea grew from early assumptions about scales and temperature regulation. But the presence of feathers, hollow bones, and bird-like limb structures shows that dinosaurs were part of a diverse lineage with traits borrowed by both reptiles and the ancestors of birds. Even the shapes of heads and snouts were more varied than early reconstructions suggested. Some dinosaurs had rounded beaks, others carried crests or horns, while some displayed subtle ridges that may have been used in quiet communication. These features hint at behaviors and ecological roles far more complex than the static images that once dominated textbooks. As we look closely at these myths, the dinosaurs of imagination and the dinosaurs of science begin to drift apart. The real creatures were dynamic, diverse, and as varied in shape as the environments they lived in. In the next segment, we explore how misunderstandings about color and display features shaped popular depictions, and how modern evidence brings us closer to the true appearance of ancient species.
Among the most enduring myths about dinosaur appearance is the idea that their colors must have been bold, dramatic, or chosen to reflect fierce personalities. This belief comes largely from artistic interpretations, where illustrators used bright hues to capture attention or convey mood rather than follow evidence. But real animals, ancient or modern, favor colors that blend with their environments. Subtle patterns, soft shades, and muted gradients help with camouflage, temperature regulation, and communication. It is far more likely that many dinosaurs displayed gentle browns, rusty reds, deep grays, or softly mottled tones. At the same time, another myth claims the opposite, that dinosaurs were entirely dull and colorless. This misconception persisted because early reconstructions avoided bold choices to prevent scientific criticism. Without evidence, neutral tones seemed the safest option. Modern discoveries now guide us between these extremes. Melanosomes preserved in fossil feathers offer clues about subtle patterns, iridescent sheens, dark stripes, or gradients that shift gently in light. These colors were practical, not symbolic, helping animals communicate quietly or blend within their surroundings. Another misconception involves display structures such as crests, frills, and horns. For years, these features were thought to be purely defensive or aggressive, reinforcing the myth of dinosaurs as combative creatures. But their shapes and arrangements suggest broader purposes, including visual communication and species recognition. Some dinosaurs likely used crests to appear larger during quiet displays, much like modern birds raise feathers or spread wings. These behaviors reduce conflict by allowing individuals to settle disputes without physical confrontation. Displays also helped with mating rituals, where subtle patterns or movements signaled strength, health, or readiness. There is also the myth that dinosaurs lacked soft tissues around the face. This belief formed because skulls preserve well, while lips, cheeks, and other flexible features rarely fossilize. Early artwork often exposed entire rows of teeth, even when animals were not biting. Comparisons with modern animals offer a clearer view. Most animals do not display their teeth constantly. Soft tissues naturally cover them when mouths are closed. It is likely that many dinosaurs shared similar structures, softening their expressions and reducing the fierce appearance often shown in movies. Finally, there is the myth that all dinosaurs looked ancient or monstrous in a way that feels distant from modern life. But their bodies were shaped by the same principles that influence animals today: climate, food, movement, and survival. Some were sleek, others heavy-bodied, and many possessed a blend of features familiar in birds, reptiles, and even mammals. As we leave behind these myths, the image of dinosaurs becomes more grounded. They transform from exaggerated reptiles into dynamic animals with varied textures, shapes, and subtle colors. This clearer understanding helps us appreciate the ancient world not as a place of fantasy, but as a natural landscape filled with living creatures shaped by evolution and environment. In the next chapter, we shift from appearance to movement, exploring myths about speed, agility, and how dinosaurs truly walked, ran, and balanced their bodies. The way dinosaurs moved has long been shaped by dramatic stories, leading to myths that picture them running at incredible speeds or lumbering slowly across ancient plains. These two extremes, unrealistic swiftness and exaggerated sluggishness, tell us more about imagination than about fossil evidence. One of the earliest myths claimed that dinosaurs were slow and clumsy, unable to run efficiently because of their size. This belief formed in the 19th century, when scientists assumed that large bodies must have moved awkwardly, similar to oversized reptiles. Without knowledge of biomechanics, these early interpretations seemed reasonable at the time. But later discoveries revealed that many dinosaurs had long, powerful legs aligned directly beneath their bodies. This upright posture allowed for efficient strides,
similar to the movement pattern seen in birds and mammals, rather than sprawling reptiles. The alignment of their joints shows they were capable of steady, confident motion. Another myth imagined dinosaurs as impossibly fast, able to outrun any threat or chase prey at speeds rivaling modern cheetahs. This idea grew from dramatic artwork and popular stories that exaggerated agility for excitement. In reality, dinosaur speed varied greatly depending on size, limb proportions, and muscle structure. Small, lightweight species, such as Ornithomimus, likely moved quickly, perhaps comparable to modern ostriches. But enormous species, like large sauropods, were built for endurance rather than speed, traveling long distances at steady, energy-efficient paces. This balance reflects the biomechanical limits found in many large animals today. Footprint trails offer another layer of insight. Sets of tracks preserved in soft, ancient mud show consistent spacing and orientation, allowing scientists to estimate walking and running speeds. These tracks reveal that dinosaurs used measured, rhythmic strides, rather than rapid bursts of uncontrolled motion. There is also the myth that dinosaurs dragged their tails behind them as they walked. This misconception persisted for decades because early skeletal mounts placed tails directly on the ground. But joint studies show that tails were held aloft, acting as natural counterbalances that improved stability and agility. This tail posture helped many dinosaurs turn smoothly, maintain balance while running, and reduce stress on their legs and spine. The lifted tail also dispels the myth that dinosaurs moved heavily or awkwardly. Instead, they used their bodies efficiently, in ways shaped by millions of years of evolution. These insights reveal an ancient world filled with animals that moved according to natural laws, not dramatic storytelling. Dinosaurs walked, ran, rested, and paced much like modern creatures, conserving energy whenever possible. In the next segment, we explore how movement myths influenced our understanding of balance, agility, and posture, revealing even more about how these animals carried their bodies through the ancient earth.
Another widespread myth about dinosaur movement suggests that all species walked with heavy, thunderous steps, shaking the ground with every stride. This idea grew from dramatic stories that emphasized size and power, even though real animals rarely move with such exaggerated force. Footprint evidence tells a calmer story. Many dinosaur tracks show shallow impressions, meaning their steps were lighter than expected for their size. This indicates careful, balanced walking rather than constant, earth-shaking impacts. A related myth claims that dinosaurs were stiff and inflexible, their bodies locked into rigid positions as they moved.
This misconception formed because early reconstructions used limited fossil material and stiff metal frames to hold mounts in place, giving the impression of restricted movement. But studies of joints, tendons, and muscle attachment points revealed that dinosaur limbs were capable of smooth, controlled motion. Some species could pivot their hips efficiently. Others made sweeping tail movements to help balance sharp turns. These adaptations helped dinosaurs navigate forests, plains, and uneven ground with confidence. Another popular idea suggests that two-legged dinosaurs always sprinted, moving rapidly whenever they traveled. This belief appeared in movies where fast movement creates excitement and tension. In reality, animals conserve energy, and even agile species walked much more often than they ran. Footprint spacing confirms this. Most bipedal trackways show moderate distances between steps, consistent with relaxed walking rather than sprinting. This evidence reveals calm, rhythmic motion, not constant bursts of speed. There is also the myth that dinosaurs could not make precise or delicate movements. Yet many species had finely tuned balance mechanisms, including flexible tails, strong tendons, and limb proportions suited for coordinated motion. These features allowed careful stepping, quick shifts in direction, and steady pacing in complex environments. Some herbivores, such as hadrosaurs, appear to have switched between two-legged and four-legged movement depending on their activity. They could stand upright to reach foliage and then lower themselves to walk comfortably on all fours. This versatility contradicts the myth that dinosaur posture was fixed or limited. Another movement myth centers on predators. Some early reconstructions showed large carnivores leaning far back on their tails, stretching their bodies into upright poses that would have been unstable in real life. Joint studies later showed that a balanced, horizontal posture was natural, helping these animals move swiftly and confidently. These corrections highlight how careful analysis turns exaggerated movement myths into a clearer understanding of ancient life. Dinosaurs did not stomp endlessly, sprint constantly, or move with rigid bodies. They navigated their world with efficiency shaped by evolution. In the next segment, we explore myths about jumping, climbing, and maneuverability, revealing how dinosaurs used their bodies in ways both surprising and grounded in natural principles.
Another myth about dinosaur movement suggests that many species were capable of dramatic leaps, powerful jumps, or acrobatic maneuvers similar to those seen in modern large mammals. This image appeared often in adventure stories, where predators bounded across rocks or herbivores leapt to escape danger. But studies of dinosaur bones tell a different story. Most species, especially larger ones, were not built for jumping.
Their limb proportions and muscle attachments indicate strength and endurance, rather than explosive lift. Even smaller predators with long legs and flexible joints show patterns consistent with quick running and agile turning, but not high leaps. These animals moved with precision, using balance and coordination rather than dramatic jumps to navigate their surroundings. There's also a myth that dinosaurs climbed trees frequently. This idea came from the discovery of small species with grasping hands or long claws. But most of these traits were used for hunting, manipulating food, or grooming feathers, not for climbing. Tree-climbing behavior requires specific joint shapes, curved claws, and strong gripping toes, traits only a handful of dinosaur species appear to have possessed. These specialized climbers were exceptions, not the rule. Another misconception imagines dinosaurs making sharp, sudden turns at high speed, like modern cheetahs. Large bodies and long tails limited how sharply they could pivot without losing balance. Tracks preserved in ancient mud reveal gentle curves rather than tight, abrupt changes in direction. Balance played a major role in movement. Long tails acted as counterweights, allowing controlled motion and stable posture during walking or running. This adaptation helped prevent tipping or stumbling, especially for bipedal species. Even predators like Tyrannosaurus were more stable movers than once imagined. Their bodies were designed for steady pursuit rather than chaotic sprinting or leaping. This style of movement conserved energy, allowing them to travel long distances in search of food. Another myth suggests that dinosaurs lacked the ability to make careful, deliberate steps. Yet many species left trackways that show precise placement of feet, with consistent spacing and depth. These tracks reflect thoughtful movement through forests, riverbanks, and soft terrain. The variety of dinosaur movement reflects the environments they lived in. Desert dwellers moved differently from forest species, and coastal dinosaurs adapted their gait to sandy or muddy shores. This range of movement strategies challenges the idea that ancient animals followed a single pattern of speed or agility. As we step away from myths about leaping, climbing, and sprinting, the true picture of dinosaur movement becomes calmer and more grounded. They were efficient travelers, shaped by bone structure, balance, and careful adaptation, rather than by dramatic physical feats. In the next chapter, we turn to myths about hunting and diet, exploring how dinosaurs truly fed, hunted, and fought for survival in ways far more subtle than popular stories suggest.
For many people, the ancient world of dinosaurs seems filled with constant hunting, fierce predators, and dramatic chases across open plains.
This image, created largely by films and adventure stories, forms one of the most enduring myths about how dinosaurs fed and survived. One of the strongest misconceptions suggests that all large carnivores were active, relentless hunters. In reality, hunting requires energy and carries significant risk, and most animals, past and present, balance their diets with a mix of behaviors. Some dinosaurs likely hunted when conditions were ideal, but also scavenged whenever the opportunity appeared. Evidence from tooth wear patterns supports this quieter, more balanced lifestyle. Teeth with scratches, chips, or polished surfaces reveal repeated contact with bones, suggesting that some predators fed on carcasses rather than relying solely on fresh kills. This contradicts the myth of constant pursuit and non-stop hunting. Another myth imagines herbivores as gentle, defenseless creatures that spent their days avoiding predators. But many plant-eating dinosaurs possessed powerful jaws, strong limbs, and impressive defensive features. Horns, frills, clubs, and armor plates reveal animals well-equipped to protect themselves and their herds. These adaptations reduce the need for constant fear or flight. In fact, fossil trackways show calm grazing patterns and organized group movement, indicating that herbivores lived structured, stable lives. There is also the myth that predators hunted constantly because they required enormous amounts of food. While large bodies did need substantial resources, efficient digestion and energy-saving behaviors helped balance their needs. Resting, scavenging, and conserving energy played major roles in their survival strategies. Another widespread misconception describes all carnivores as using teeth primarily for slicing through flesh. But different species had teeth shaped for varied purposes. Some teeth were adapted for crushing bone, others for gripping slippery prey, and some for mixed feeding strategies. These variations reveal a complex feeding landscape, not a world dominated by a single type of predator behavior. Even among herbivores, diets were more varied than once assumed. Some species ate tough, fibrous plants. Others preferred softer vegetation, and some used beaks to clip leaves delicately. This diversity challenges the myth that all plant-eating dinosaurs fed in the same way. Fossilized stomach contents offer rare but valuable clues. These preserved samples show a mix of leaves, seeds, twigs, and even small stones used to help grind food, an ancient parallel to modern birds. By examining these details, we move away from dramatic myths and toward a calmer understanding of dinosaur diets. Feeding was a daily routine shaped by energy needs, environment, and anatomy, not by constant danger or dramatic action. In the next segment, we explore myths about cooperative hunting, pack behavior, and predator-prey relationships, revealing how dinosaurs interacted within their ancient ecosystems.
Another myth that shaped popular views of dinosaurs is the belief that many carnivorous species hunted in highly coordinated packs, similar to wolves. This idea became popular because coordinated hunting adds excitement to stories, creating dramatic scenes of synchronized chases and elaborate strategies. While some fossils hint at possible group behavior, clear evidence for true pack hunting remains limited. Parallel trackways may show dinosaurs moving together, but movement is not the same as planned cooperation. Animals can travel in groups for many reasons, including migration, safety, or access to water. Some scientists suggest that large carnivores were more likely solitary or loosely social, relying on opportunity rather than complex strategy. This pattern matches many modern predators, which hunt alone but may gather when food is plentiful. The ancient world likely reflected similar mixtures of independence and simple cooperation, not carefully orchestrated hunts. Another myth assumes that predators always targeted the largest or most dramatic prey available. In reality, animals typically choose the safest and easiest food sources. Younger, slower, or injured herbivores would have been far more common targets than healthy adults. Evidence from healed bone injuries in herbivores supports this idea. Many individuals survived encounters with predators, meaning attacks were not always successful or fatal. This contradicts the myth of constant, relentless predation. There is also a misconception that all carnivores competed fiercely with one another for food. But differences in jaw strength, tooth shape, and hunting style reveal that species often filled distinct ecological roles. Some focused on small prey, others specialized in scavenging, and still others targeted medium-sized animals. Among herbivores, diet was equally varied. Some had broad, grinding teeth suited for chewing tough plants. Others carried narrow beaks designed for clipping leaves or selecting soft vegetation. This diversity shows that plant eaters did not all graze in the same way, nor did they rely on a single type of food. Another myth suggests that all dinosaurs ate continuously, spending most of their day feeding. But digestive adaptations such as fermentation chambers and gastroliths, the small stones used to grind food, allowed herbivores to process meals efficiently. These adaptations reduced the need for constant eating and supported calm, rhythmic feeding patterns. Predators also did not need to hunt constantly. Large meals could sustain them for long periods, much like modern crocodilians or big cats that rest quietly after eating. This rhythm contradicts the myth of endless pursuit and highlights a lifestyle shaped by patience and conservation of energy. By correcting these assumptions, the prehistoric world becomes less chaotic and more balanced. Dinosaurs lived within food webs that functioned much like modern ecosystems, where energy flowed through calm cycles of feeding, resting, and gradual movement.
In the next segment, we explore myths about specialized diets and the surprising variety of foods dinosaurs relied on, revealing how different species shaped their environments through everyday feeding habits. One of the quieter myths about dinosaur diets suggests that most species ate only one type of food, following narrow habits that barely changed throughout their lives. This assumption comes from early attempts to classify dinosaurs into simple groups of carnivores and herbivores, with little room for nuance. But real ecosystems are never that simple, and fossil evidence reveals a wide range of feeding behaviors shaped by climate, environment, and anatomy. Some dinosaurs specialized in certain foods, while others adapted to varied diets depending on what was available. A well-known misconception claims that large herbivores fed exclusively on tall trees, stripping branches high above the ground, while some, like sauropods, could reach impressive heights. Fossilized plant remains suggest that many species also fed on low shrubs, soft ferns, and ground-level vegetation. This variety helped them maintain stable diets even when seasons changed. Another myth assumes that all herbivores fed gently, clipping leaves without disturbing their environment. But some dinosaurs possessed powerful jaws capable of crushing tough plants. Certain species used broad, ridged teeth to grind fibrous material, shaping ancient landscapes through continuous browsing. Gastroliths, smooth stones found in the stomach regions of some fossils, offer additional clues. These stones helped grind food, similar to the process used by modern birds, showing that chewing was not the only method dinosaurs used to process tough vegetation. This adaptation reveals calm efficiency rather than dramatic feeding behavior. Among carnivores, diet diversity was equally surprising. Some species targeted small prey, such as lizards, insects, or young dinosaurs, relying on agility rather than strength. Others possessed teeth suited for gripping rather than slicing, suggesting they fed on fish or small animals in wetlands and coastal areas. A myth also persists that predators ate only meat, avoiding other food sources. But many modern carnivores occasionally eat plants, berries, or carrion when the opportunity arises. It is likely that some dinosaurs displayed similar flexibility, especially during periods when prey was scarce. Another subtle myth claims that dinosaurs never changed their diets as they aged. But bone growth patterns and tooth development suggest that young individuals often fed on different foods than adults. This strategy reduced competition within species and allowed herds to use resources more efficiently. By studying these clues, we see that dinosaur diets were far more varied than simple labels suggest. Feeding strategies adapted to climate, body size, and available plants or animals, creating a complex and balanced ancient food web. In the next segment, we explore the final group of diet myths, including mistaken assumptions about extreme feeding behaviors, unusual prey, and the limits of what dinosaurs could truly eat.
One of the more dramatic myths about dinosaur diets suggests that some species fed on unusual or exaggerated prey, including animals far larger than themselves. This idea grew from imaginative artwork and adventure stories that preferred intense scenes over realistic feeding behavior. In truth, most carnivores targeted prey that offered the best balance between reward and risk. Chasing large or dangerous animals could lead to serious injury, so predators often selected smaller or weaker individuals. Fossil evidence of healed injuries in herbivores shows that attacks were not always fatal, further suggesting that predators made cautious choices. Another myth claims that herbivorous dinosaurs fed without discrimination, consuming any plant material within reach. But tooth shape and jaw mechanics reveal that many species were selective feeders. Some preferred soft leaves, others specialized in tough cycads or ancient pine needles, and some clipped delicate branches with precision. Even the concept of omnivory is misunderstood. Some dinosaurs, once labeled strict herbivores, may have consumed insects or small animals occasionally, just as many modern plant eaters do today. This flexible behavior allowed them to adapt to changing seasons and shifting habitats. There is also a myth that predators ate constantly, consuming any animal they encountered. But large carnivores, including dinosaurs, needed time to digest meals, often resting for long periods afterward. This slow rhythm reflects a calmer lifestyle than the dramatic scenes often portrayed in popular media. Another misconception suggests that scavenging was rare or unimportant. In reality, scavenging played a crucial role in ancient ecosystems. Carnivores with strong jaws or bone-crushing teeth likely fed on carcasses when fresh prey was unavailable, recycling nutrients throughout the environment. Some myths also exaggerate the biting power of certain species. While a few dinosaurs had incredibly strong bites, others had more moderate forces suited to their diets. Comparing all carnivores as if they shared the same feeding abilities oversimplifies the diversity of ancient life. Even the idea that certain predators hunted only with strength ignores the importance of patience and strategy. Many dinosaurs likely stalked prey quietly, conserving energy until the right moment arrived. This method aligns with behaviors seen in modern large reptiles and birds of prey. Among herbivores, myths exaggerate their vulnerability, suggesting they were endlessly hunted. But horns, frills, tail clubs, and thick armor reveal that many species were well protected. These features served not only as defense, but also as deterrence, reducing the need for constant conflict. All of these insights paint a calmer and more balanced image of ancient ecosystems. Dinosaurs fed in ways shaped by efficiency, safety, and available resources, not by constant dramatic action. With these myths gently set aside, we move toward the next chapter, where we explore misconceptions about the environments dinosaurs lived in.
Ancient Earth was not a single landscape of steaming jungles, but a complex world filled with varied climates and ecosystems.
The ancient world of dinosaurs was imagined as a single, unified landscape filled with steaming jungles and constant heat. This myth began early in paleontology, when scientists found fossils in sediments that hinted at warm, humid environments. Because many early discoveries came from regions that had once been lush floodplains, people assumed all dinosaurs lived in tropical swamps. This assumption shaped artwork, textbooks, and museum displays for generations. But as more fossils were uncovered across different continents, a much more varied picture emerged. Dinosaurs lived not only in warm forests, but also in deserts, coastal plains, river valleys, and even polar regions that experienced long winter darkness. Their world was complex, diverse, and shaped by shifting climates. Another myth suggests that the entire Earth was hot during the age of dinosaurs. While global temperatures were indeed warmer on average, climate varied greatly between regions. Some areas were dry and windy, while others supported fertile plains or thick forests. Evidence for this diversity comes from fossilized plants. Ancient ferns, conifers, flowering plants, and shrubs show that different ecosystems hosted different kinds of vegetation. This plant diversity allowed dinosaurs to adapt to many habitats, not just tropical environments. There is also the misconception that dinosaurs avoided colder climates completely. But fossils found in ancient polar regions show that some species lived comfortably in areas with seasonal snow and long periods of darkness. These dinosaurs likely possessed insulating feathers or behaviors that helped them conserve heat. Another myth imagines that dinosaurs lived in dense, tangled forests with little open space. In reality, many ancient landscapes were open plains or lightly wooded areas, allowing large herbivores to travel in herds and predators to keep distant watch. Fossilized soils reveal ancient droughts, seasonal floods, and fire cycles. These patterns show that dinosaur ecosystems changed over time, shaped by climate shifts and geological processes. Such variability challenges the image of a single, unchanging prehistoric world. Even the idea that volcanoes dominated dinosaur habitats is exaggerated. While volcanic regions did exist, many dinosaurs lived far from active geological zones, in stable environments where rivers gently shaped the land. The ancient Earth was expansive and dynamic, filled with quiet landscapes that supported diverse groups of animals. By understanding these varied environments, we move beyond the myth of a universal dinosaur jungle and begin to appreciate the complexity of their world.
In the next segment, we explore myths about extreme climates, ancient weather patterns, and how dinosaurs adapted to conditions that changed slowly over millions of years. Another common myth about dinosaur environments is the belief that their world was constantly hot, humid, and almost uniformly tropical. This image formed early, when limited fossil evidence suggested warm climates dominated the ancient Earth. But a closer look at sediment layers and plant fossils reveals a far more nuanced story. Different regions experienced seasons, temperature changes, and rainfall patterns much like modern environments, though shaped by ancient continental arrangements. During certain periods, some parts of the world were surprisingly dry. Regions that once hosted dinosaurs show signs of ancient deserts, with fossil dunes and wind-shaped sediments indicating long stretches without water. These dry landscapes supported species adapted to sparse vegetation and wide-open plains. In contrast, other areas experienced seasonal flooding. Layers of mudstone and ripple marks reveal ancient river systems that expanded and contracted throughout the year. Dinosaurs living in these environments likely migrated or shifted their feeding patterns depending on water availability. Another myth suggests that all dinosaurs lived close to thick forests. While forests did exist, many regions were covered in low shrubs, hardy ferns, and early flowering plants that formed open habitats ideal for herd behavior. These environments offered wide visibility, helping herbivores spot predators from a distance. There is also a misconception that dinosaurs could not survive in regions with cooler temperatures. But fossils found near ancient polar regions tell a different story. Some species lived in environments with cold winters and extended periods of darkness, enduring conditions far from the tropical stereotype. These dinosaurs likely relied on feathers or dense insulation to stay warm. Evidence from bone growth rings suggests seasonal changes affected their development, much like how modern animals respond to shifting daylight and temperature. Even rainfall patterns were more variable than once believed. Some areas experienced monsoon-like seasons with heavy precipitation, while others were prone to droughts that shaped plant growth and animal movement. This diversity helped create a wide range of ecological niches for different species. Another myth imagines ancient Earth as uniformly lush, with abundant vegetation everywhere. But plant fossils reveal that some regions were nutrient-poor or subject to periodic fires. These challenges influenced where herbivores grazed and how predator populations were distributed. Understanding these environmental differences helps correct the simplistic idea of a single dinosaur habitat. Instead, the ancient world contained deserts, wetlands, forests, plains, and seasonal regions that together created a complex mosaic of ecosystems. In the next segment, we look at myths involving extreme weather, unexpected climates, and how dinosaurs adapted to a world that changed gradually over millions of years. One of the more dramatic myths about the dinosaur world is the belief that ancient Earth was a place of constant, violent weather. Endless storms, towering lightning strikes, and turbulent skies. This image became popular through adventure stories and illustrations that needed dramatic settings rather than quiet, realistic environments. But evidence from fossil soils and sediment layers suggests that most regions experienced ordinary weather cycles, shaped by calm periods broken occasionally by storms, much like today. Ancient climates were dynamic, but not relentlessly harsh. Another myth imagines that dinosaurs lived in a world without seasons. This idea came from early assumptions that warm global temperatures erased the annual rhythms we see now. Yet fossils discovered across different latitudes reveal that seasonal change existed, especially in regions far from the equator. Bone growth rings offer one of the clearest clues. These rings resemble those in trees, recording periods of fast and slow growth. They show that dinosaurs experienced fluctuations in climate, suggesting cycles of warmth, rainfall, and occasional scarcity. Plant fossils also reveal strong seasonal patterns. Some regions show layers of leaves that fell annually, forming thick beds preserved beneath ancient rivers. These deposits indicate that many dinosaurs lived in environments where seasons gently shaped daily life. There is also the myth that polar regions were uninhabitable during dinosaur times. People often imagine the poles as eternally frozen, but in the Mesozoic era, these regions were milder, though still cool and seasonal. Dinosaurs adapted to long winter nights, changing daylight, and cooler temperatures with a combination of feathers, behavior, and slow seasonal rhythms. Another misconception claims that dinosaur habitats were uniformly flat. But geological evidence shows rivers, cliffs, coastlines, uplands, and rolling hills shaped ancient landscapes. These varied elevations created microclimates that influenced where animals lived and how they moved. Fossil trackways sometimes appear along ancient shorelines, showing that dinosaurs walked near coastal environments where tides gently rose and fell. These soft, shifting lands required careful movement and reflect a quieter, more nuanced picture of daily life than the dramatic scenes often imagined. Even the vegetation myths deserve correction. Early artwork depicted endless conifer forests, or forests of towering ferns stretching endlessly in every direction. But by the late Mesozoic, flowering plants were spreading, creating diverse landscapes filled with low bushes, open meadows, and mixed woodlands. This changing plant life shaped diet, movement, and habitat selection. Some dinosaurs grazed in open areas, while others browsed in forests or navigated wetlands where reeds and early grasses grew. These ecosystems were calm, balanced, and full of diversity. As we continue correcting these myths, the ancient world becomes less extreme and more familiar. Dinosaurs lived in environments shaped by climate, geography, and plant growth, conditions that shifted slowly over millions of years. In the next segment, we explored the final set of environment myths, focusing on how continents moved, how habitats changed, and why these shifts mattered for dinosaur evolution. Another widespread myth about the dinosaur world is the belief that continents remained unchanged throughout their existence, creating stable environments that lasted for millions of years. This assumption formed early, before scientists understood how powerful and gradual continental drift truly is. In reality, the continents were constantly moving, breaking apart and drifting across the globe at a slow but steady pace. These changes reshaped coastlines, mountain ranges, and climate zones, influencing where dinosaurs lived and how they adapted. When the supercontinent Pangaea began to separate, new ocean basins formed and climates shifted. Some regions became wetter, while others grew increasingly dry. These long-term changes encouraged the spread of new plant species and altered the distribution of dinosaur populations. Another myth suggests that dinosaur habitats remained lush and fully stable until the moment of extinction. But fossil records show that ecosystems changed gradually, responding to volcanic activity, shifting seas, and variations in atmospheric conditions. These subtle shifts shaped the rise and fall of different species long before the final extinction event. There is also a misconception that ancient landscapes were uniformly rich in resources. But some regions faced long droughts or nutrient-poor soils, while others supported dense vegetation. This variety created ecological pressure that shaped body size, diet, and behavior across many species. Fossil pollen offered detailed glimpses into these slow transformations. Pollen layers reveal expansions of flowering plants and declines in older plant groups, marking the quiet reshaping of ecosystems over time. Dinosaurs adapted to these changes through gradual shifts in feeding strategies and movement patterns. Another myth imagines that sea levels remained constant during the age of dinosaurs. In truth, seas rose and fell repeatedly. Sometimes, vast coastal plains emerged, supporting herds of herbivores. At other times, rising waters transformed these areas into shallow seas filled with marine life. These movements influenced migration, nesting sites, and the spread of different species across the landscape. Ancient shorelines shifted slowly, guiding where animals traveled and which habitats flourished. Volcanic activity also played a role in shaping environments. While not constant or universally destructive, periodic eruptions influenced climate and vegetation across large regions. These events were part of the natural rhythm of Earth, not continuous catastrophes as some myths suggest. All of these details reveal a world in motion, dynamic yet gradual, shaped not by constant chaos, but by slow geological processes. Dinosaurs lived within landscapes that evolved over millions of years, creating the variety we see in the fossil record today. As we leave behind the myths of a single, unchanging dinosaur environment, we enter the next chapter, where we explore myths about extinction. The disappearance of dinosaurs has inspired some of the most dramatic and imaginative stories of all. But the truth is quieter and more complex than many people realize.
The extinction of the dinosaurs is often imagined as a single, sudden event that ended their world in one dramatic moment. This idea appears in many stories, where an enormous fireball strikes the earth and instantly wipes out almost every living creature. But the real story is more gradual and more complex. The asteroid impact was indeed catastrophic, yet its effects unfolded over time, shaping climate, ecosystems, and food chains in ways that reveal a very different picture from the common myth. One of the most persistent misconceptions is that the asteroid alone caused immediate global devastation. While the impact released immense energy, the world did not turn silent in a single instant. Instead, fires, dust clouds, and climate changes rippled outward, creating challenges that accumulated slowly across years and decades. Another myth suggests that dinosaurs were already declining dramatically before the impact. Some early interpretations of the fossil record hinted at decreasing diversity, but newer evidence disagrees. Many groups were flourishing, with varied species living across different environments. The idea of a slow pre-impact decline came largely from gaps in the fossil record, not from a true decrease in dinosaur populations. Discoveries from South America, Asia, and North America reveal thriving ecosystems right up to the end of the Cretaceous period. There is also the misconception that volcanic activity was constantly destructive across the planet, weakening ecosystems long before the asteroid arrived. While volcanic regions did influence climate, their effects varied greatly depending on location and timing. Some volcanic events released gases slowly over long spans, shaping climate without causing immediate collapse. Another myth imagines the post-impact world as instantly dark and frozen. Dust and aerosols did block sunlight, but the degree and duration varied by region. Some areas experienced longer periods of cooling, while others recovered more quickly, creating a patchwork of conditions across the globe. These climate changes affected plants first. Reduced sunlight slowed photosynthesis, leading to smaller harvests for herbivores. Then, predators felt the impact as food sources became scarcer. Another misconception suggests that only dinosaurs were affected. But many other groups, such as marine reptiles, large flying animals, and numerous plant species also faced severe losses. The extinction event was widespread, shaping life on land, in the oceans, and in the skies. Despite these challenges, not all life disappeared. Small animals with flexible diets, including early birds and mammals, survived by adapting to changing conditions. Their resilience helped shape the future world long after the dinosaurs were gone. Understanding these corrections helps us see the extinction as a gradual transition. It was not a single moment of destruction, but a complex sequence of environmental stressors that gradually reshaped Earth's ecosystems. In the next segment, we explore myths about how dinosaurs responded to these changes, uncovering which survival strategies succeeded and which could not withstand the shifting world.
Another widespread myth about the extinction event is the belief that dinosaurs failed to react or adapt, as if they were unable to respond to sudden environmental stress. This idea oversimplifies both their biology and the complexity of the world they lived in. Dinosaurs were not passive creatures. They had survived millions of years of climate shifts, migrations, volcanic eruptions, and changing ecosystems. Their resilience shaped entire landscapes long before the final extinction event. Another myth imagines that dinosaurs panicked in the face of the asteroid's impact, fleeing in chaos across a burning world. But fossil evidence shows no widespread signs of sudden mass movement or chaotic escape. Instead, the disappearance of species happened gradually, spreading across different environments over time. A common misconception suggests that all dinosaurs died instantly. In reality, some populations likely persisted for months or even years after the impact, depending on food availability and climate conditions in their regions. The extinction was uneven, influenced by local environments and ecological stability. There is also the myth that dinosaurs were too large to survive major climate disruptions. While size played a role, many smaller species also disappeared. The key factor was food. When plant life declined, herbivores struggled, and predators lost their primary prey. Another myth claims that dinosaurs lacked the intelligence or adaptability to survive sudden challenges. But many species had complex behaviors, including herding, nesting, and migration, which reflect flexibility rather than simplicity. The scale of the environmental shifts, not a lack of adaptability, created pressures no species could fully withstand. There is also a misconception that dinosaurs could have survived if they had moved to different regions. But global climate changes affected ecosystems across continents, limiting safe places to relocate. The reach of the asteroid's impact was so wide that local migration would not have provided long-term survival. Some myths exaggerate volcanic activity during the extinction period, imagining constant eruptions that smothered the Earth in ash. While volcanism did influence climate, it did not create immediate and universal devastation. Its effects layered gradually on top of the impact event, contributing to long-term environmental stress rather than sudden collapse. Another myth suggests that the extinction was entirely destructive and left the world barren. But ecosystems began to recover as soon as conditions stabilized. Early mammals, birds, and many plants adapted quickly. filling empty ecological spaces with quiet resilience. These survivors were not superior, but simply suited to forage widely, hide easily, and reproduce quickly. Their small size, flexible diets, and ability to live in varied habitats helped them endure when larger species struggled. Understanding the diversity of responses among species helps dispel the idea of a single dramatic collapse. The extinction was a sweeping, global event, but it unfolded in subtle and varied ways across the ancient world. In the next segment, we explore myths about the asteroid itself, its size, its effects, and how its impact shaped Earth's future long after the age of dinosaurs ended.
Among the most familiar myths about the dinosaur extinction is the belief that the asteroid was extraordinarily large, larger even than scientific estimates describe. Popular stories often exaggerate its size, imagining an object the scale of a small moon falling toward Earth. In reality, the asteroid was roughly 10 to 15 kilometers wide. This size is enormous by human standards, yet far smaller than dramatic myths suggest. Its power came not from its size alone, but from the speed at which it traveled and the conditions of the impact. Another myth imagines a blazing fireball visible across the entire planet, as if every living creature saw its arrival. But only regions near the impact site would have witnessed the event directly. The rest of the world felt its effects gradually through shifting climate and disrupted ecosystems. There is also the misconception that the asteroid impact created total darkness for many years. While dust and aerosols did block sunlight, the duration and intensity varied across different parts of the globe. Some regions experienced long, dim periods, while others had shorter intervals of reduced light. Another popular myth claims that the atmosphere instantly filled with toxic gases, making survival impossible for any species. However, the real effects were more nuanced. Changes in temperature, plant growth, and food availability posed the greatest challenges, not immediate global poisoning. Some stories exaggerate the scale of the crater itself, imagining a hole that engulfed an entire continent. The actual crater, now known as Chicxulub, spans about 180 kilometers, immense, but not the continental-scale scar often described. Much of it lies buried beneath layers of sediment, quiet and hidden from view. Another misconception suggests that tsunamis swept across the entire Earth at once. While massive waves did form near the impact site, their reach varied, influenced by coastlines and ocean basins of the ancient world. Farther inland, different processes shaped the aftermath, including wildfires and climate shifts. There is also the belief that the asteroid was the only cause of the extinction.
But environmental stress had already begun to spread from volcanic activity and shifting sea levels. The asteroid delivered the final blow, amplifying changes that were already reshaping ecosystems. Some imagined that the impact destroyed everything instantly. Yet many plants, insects, small animals, and early birds survived by sheltering in burrows, water, or dense vegetation. The world did not fall silent overnight. Instead, it entered a long period of recovery and transformation. Understanding these details helps dissolve the exaggerated images often associated with the extinction event. The asteroid was powerful, but its effects unfolded across time, influenced by climate, geography, and the resilience of life. In the next segment, we explore the final myths about extinction, especially the belief that all dinosaurs vanished completely before turning to the creatures that lived on and shaped the world that followed.
One of the most enduring myths about the extinction event is the belief that all dinosaurs vanished completely, leaving no living descendants behind. This misconception grew from early scientific interpretations that separated birds sharply from their ancient relatives. But evidence gathered over recent decades reveals a different story. Birds are now understood to be the direct descendants of small feathered theropod dinosaurs, carrying ancient traits quietly into the modern world. This connection gently dissolves the myth of total dinosaur extinction. Another misconception suggests that only size determined survival. People often imagine that small animals survived simply because they were tiny, and larger creatures disappeared because they were big. But survival depended on flexibility, diet, nesting habits, habitat choices, and the ability to endure changing conditions. Some large animals did survive the extinction event, while some small species vanished. The deciding factors were far more subtle than size alone, shaped by the specific environments each species relied on. Another myth claims that mammals replaced dinosaurs immediately after the impact, rising quickly to fill the vacant world. In truth, the recovery of ecosystems took thousands of years. Mammals expanded gradually, often in small, cautious ways, as plants and insects slowly returned. There is also the belief that birds barely survived, clinging to existence in a single narrow region. But fossil evidence suggests a more complex pattern, with different lineages adapting to varied habitats. Some early birds may have survived by feeding on seeds, which remained available even as vegetation suffered. Another myth imagines the post-impact world as a complete wasteland, empty and silent for centuries. But pockets of life persisted. Ferns, small animals, freshwater creatures, and insects endured through the difficult years. The world was damaged, but not lifeless. Some believe that dinosaurs failed simply because they were poorly adapted or unable to change. But they had survived for more than 160 million years through shifting climates and drifting continents. The final extinction event was extraordinary, far beyond the normal challenges of their long history. There is also a myth that dinosaurs disappeared suddenly everywhere at the same moment.
but extinction patterns varied across continents, unfolding unevenly as climates shifted and food webs collapsed. This gradual process left a fossil record with overlapping timelines rather than a single sharp dividing line. All of these corrections bring us closer to the truth. Dinosaurs did not vanish into absolute silence. They transformed. Small feathered species survived, evolving into the birds that glide, perch, and sing across the world today. As we close this chapter, we leave behind the powerful myths of sudden endings and total disappearance. In the next chapter, we explore myths about the survivors themselves, how birds, crocodiles, mammals, and other lineages continued the quiet legacy of the ancient world.
The end of the age of dinosaurs is often imagined as a clean divide, with ancient creatures disappearing completely and a new world rising abruptly in their place. This idea creates the myth that nothing familiar survived the extinction event, leaving Earth empty until modern animals evolved. But the truth is much quieter and far more continuous. Many lineages that lived alongside dinosaurs endured the changing world, carrying ancient traits forward into modern ecosystems. The age of dinosaurs did not vanish. It gently transformed. One of the most persistent myths is the belief that birds are unrelated to dinosaurs. For decades, birds were thought to be separate, evolving independently from distant reptilian ancestors. But fossil evidence reveals that birds are the last living dinosaurs, descended from small, feathered theropods. Feathers, hollow bones, and certain hip structures appear in both birds and their ancient relatives. These shared features dissolve the boundary between the two groups, showing a lineage that stretches calmly from the ancient world into the present. Another myth imagines crocodiles as unchanged relics of the dinosaur age. While crocodilians are ancient, they have evolved steadily over millions of years. Their ancestors once included swift, slender species that lived on land, far different from the familiar river dwellers of today. The idea that crocodiles survived because they were superior is also a myth. They endured because their semi-aquatic lifestyle, flexible diet, and ability to shelter in water helped them weather environmental stress. Survival was not about strength, but adaptation to shifting conditions. Mammals also survived the extinction, but myths often portray them as tiny, timid creatures hiding endlessly from dinosaurs. Modern research shows that mammals had already diversified into ecological niches long before the asteroid impact. Some were climbers, others were burrowers, and many fed on insects, seeds, or plants that helped them survive the years of global change. Another misconception is that reptiles as a whole survived unchanged, but only certain lineages endured, and many ancient groups vanished entirely.
The survivors shared traits that allowed them to cope with new climates, not because they were inherently more resilient. Even amphibians continued through the extinction, supported by their ability to shelter in water and damp environments. These habitats acted as calm refuges during difficult years, helping them persist while other groups declined. All of these survivors remind us that extinction events reshape life but do not erase it completely. The threads of ancient ecosystems continue quietly into the present, woven through birds' wings, crocodilian eyes, and the small, resilient creatures of today. In the next segment, we explore additional myths about survival, including the idea that early mammals instantly became dominant, and how ecosystems gradually rebuilt themselves after the dramatic changes of the late Cretaceous.
Another persistent myth about the aftermath of the extinction event is the belief that mammals immediately took over the Earth, rising quickly to dominate empty landscapes left behind by the dinosaurs. This idea suggests a sudden shift, as if mammals had been waiting quietly for their chance to flourish. But fossil evidence paints a gentler and much slower transformation. In the early years after the extinction, mammals remained small, cautious, and diverse, adapting gradually to the quiet spaces left behind by the dinosaurs. Their rise was not immediate, but unfolded step by step, shaped by the slow recovery of plants and insects. Another myth imagines early mammals as uniformly tiny, shrew-like creatures that lived in constant fear. While many species were small, others had already begun exploring different roles long before the extinction event. Some climbed trees, others burrowed underground, and some hunted insects with quiet precision. This diversity helped them survive when larger animals struggled, offering flexibility in food sources and shelter. There is also a misconception that birds barely survived and that only a few species continued into the New World. But evidence shows that multiple lineages endured, especially those that fed on seeds or lived in stable, sheltered environments. Seeds remained available even when foliage declined, providing nourishment during difficult years. Another myth suggests that birds survived simply because they could fly, but many early bird species that lived in forests did not endure. It was not flight alone that ensured survival, but diet, habitat choice, and the ability to adapt to changing environments. Reptiles also survived the extinction, but myths sometimes merge all surviving reptiles into a single, unchanging group. In reality, many ancient reptile lineages vanished completely, while others evolved into new forms as climates shifted. The survivors were those that could tolerate unstable conditions, not necessarily those that were strongest or largest. Another widespread misconception claims that the extinction event reset the world instantly, allowing new species to appear in rapid, dramatic bursts. But ecosystems rebuilt themselves slowly,
beginning with simple plants and insects that restored the foundational layers of ancient food webs. Small mammals and birds occupied these recovering spaces carefully. They expanded into new niches only as stability returned, following the rhythms of a world gently finding balance after a period of disruption. Even the idea that crocodilians remained unchanged through this time is a myth. Different species adapted in subtle ways, shifting their diets, habitats, and behaviors as the environment transformed. Some groups thrived, while others disappeared quietly, leaving no fossil record beyond isolated traces. These corrections showed that survival after the extinction event was not dramatic or sudden. It was a gradual process shaped by flexibility, opportunity, and the ability to endure periods of scarcity. In the next segment, we continue exploring survival myths, focusing on plants, insects, and the slow return of forests that allowed ancient ecosystems to rebuild over thousands of years.
When people imagine the world after the dinosaur extinction, they often picture a silent, barren landscape where nothing could grow. This image creates the myth that plant life collapsed entirely and took ages to recover. But the fossil record shows a different rhythm. While many plants did decline, others rebounded more quickly than expected, quietly reshaping the world in the years that followed. Some species, especially ferns, returned rapidly after the impact, taking advantage of open sunlight and nutrient-rich ash. These fern blooms are preserved in layers of sediment across multiple continents. They mark one of the earliest signs of recovery, showing that life persisted and adapted even in difficult conditions. Another myth suggests that flowering plants vanished during this time, but many flowering species survived, especially those with hardy seeds capable of enduring long periods of darkness and cold. Seeds served as natural time capsules, waiting for sunlight and warmth to return. There is also the misconception that insects suffered a complete collapse. While some groups declined, many survived and played a crucial role in rebuilding ancient ecosystems. Insects helped pollinate returning plants, break down dead material, and form the base of food webs that supported small surviving animals. Another myth imagines that freshwater environments were devastated as severely as land ecosystems. But lakes, rivers, and wetlands offered refuges where many species endured the aftermath. Their stable temperatures and sheltered habitats provided protection during climatic shifts. Small fish, amphibians, and aquatic invertebrates continued quietly in these environments. These survivors helped stabilize ecosystems when conditions slowly improved on land. There is also the belief that forests vanished completely. While forest loss was significant, forests regrew gradually as climates recovered. Different plant species returned at different times, forming young, patchy habitats that supported early birds, mammals, and insects. These recovering landscapes were not the dense forests of the late Cretaceous. Instead,
They resembled open woodlands and sparse groves shaped by early growth and scattered patches of vegetation. These environments offered new ecological opportunities for the species that survived. Another myth imagines that ecosystems return to normal quickly, allowing animals to flourish within a few generations. But recovery took thousands of years, unfolding slowly as plants and insects rebuilt the foundation of the food web. Only after these layers stabilized could larger animals begin to reappear and expand. Understanding these gentle processes dispels the dramatic myths of a world wiped clean. Life persisted in pockets, adapted patiently, and rebuilt ecosystems through quiet resilience. In the next segment, we explore the final myths about survival, especially the idea that dinosaurs left no descendants except birds, and how ancient traits continue to shape the modern world.
Perhaps the most enduring myth about what survived after the extinction is the belief that dinosaurs disappeared entirely, leaving no trace of their ancient world beyond scattered fossils. This idea persists in popular imagination, even though the truth is far more connected and continuous. The clearest examples are modern birds. Far from being distant relatives, they are living dinosaurs, carrying forward feathers, hollow bones, and ancient skeletal patterns. Every quiet song, every gentle glide, and every patterned plume echoes traits shaped millions of years ago. Yet another myth suggests that birds were merely a tiny, lucky group that slipped through the extinction unnoticed. But their survival was grounded in adaptability. Seed-based diets, small body sizes, and flexible behavior helped many lineages endure long periods of darkness and scarcity. Another misconception imagines that only birds carried dinosaur traits into the present. But crocodilians preserve ancient lineages as well, not because they remained unchanged, but because their semi-aquatic lifestyles, slow metabolisms, and generalist diets helped them withstand sudden climate shifts. There is also a myth that mammals quickly replaced dinosaurs because they were inherently superior. In truth, their success came from filling ecological spaces that opened slowly as plants and insects returned. They expanded carefully, adapting step by step to the recovering world. Another widespread myth claims that ancient ecosystems were completely erased, with no continuity between the age of dinosaurs and what followed. But many patterns of life persisted. Plant cycles, river systems, insect behavior, and even certain ecological roles continued quietly as the world healed. Some imagine that reptiles survived uniformly, but many ancient reptile groups vanished, while others evolved into new forms. Survival depended on flexibility, shelter, and diet, not on simple toughness. It is also a myth that all surviving species returned to normal quickly. Recovery took thousands of years,
and early survivors lived in landscapes that were patchy, sparse, and constantly shifting. These early ecosystems were fragile but full of potential, offering space for small, adaptable species to grow and evolve. Even the idea that only animals carried the legacy of dinosaurs is misleading. Plants that coexisted with dinosaurs, such as ferns, conifers, and ancient flowering species, continued to shape the Earth long after the extinction. Their persistence helped rebuild habitats, providing food and shelter for the animals that came next. All of these details remind us that the end of the dinosaurs was not a complete erasure. It was a transition, a reshaping of life that led slowly, patiently, toward the world we know today. As we close this chapter, we prepare to reflect on the quiet continuity between past and present. In the epilogue, we look back at the myths we explored, the truths we uncovered, and the gentle ways dinosaurs remain part of our modern world.
As our quiet journey comes to an end, we find ourselves returning gently to the myths that shaped our earliest ideas about dinosaurs. For generations, these ancient animals lived in our imaginations as fierce giants, roaring through steamy jungles and battling endlessly beneath dark, stormy skies. But with each myth we set aside, the true ancient world came into softer focus. We discovered creatures that moved calmly, lived in varied landscapes, and shaped ecosystems with patterns far subtler than the stories we grew up with. Some dinosaurs were small enough to perch on branches. Others walked steadily across quiet plains, leaving footprints that still rest beneath layers of dust and stone. Many built nests, cared for their young, and communicated through gentle sounds carried on warm, ancient winds. Their world was not a place of constant danger or endless chaos. It was a world of rhythms, daylight, seasons, migrations, and slow geological change that shaped life over millions of years. Even their final chapters were quieter than the myths suggest. Extinction did not sweep across the earth in one sudden moment. Instead, it unfolded gradually, touching forests, plains, rivers, and oceans differently as climates shifted and ecosystems changed. Yet, life endured. Birds carried forward ancient traits in hollow bones and soft feathers. Mammals expanded carefully into recovering landscapes, while plants and insects rebuilt the quiet foundations of new ecosystems. These survivors remind us that the story of the dinosaurs did not end completely. It transformed, flowing into new forms and new rhythms that still shape the world we live in today. The myths we began with were never wrong in spirit. They were simply early attempts to imagine a world so distant that it feels like a dream. Tonight, as you drift toward rest,
The real dinosaurs stand gently in your thoughts, creatures shaped not by fantasy, but by patient science and the soft clues left across stone. Each myth replaced with understanding brings us closer to the ancient Earth, and each truth reveals that the past was not louder or fiercer, but simply older, calmer, and deeper than we once believed. So let the quiet of their world settle around you like dust drifting through a warm twilight. Feel the steady rhythm of lives long gone, moving softly beneath the surface of time. And as the ancient earth fades into darkness, may your night be peaceful, calm, and filled with gentle dreams of worlds quietly turning beneath distant stars.